Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and I was always told I had a voice for radio, so today I'm going to be showing you about an exciting new card from the Pokémon trading card game. It is Altar of the Sun, and it is going to be coming out in the Pokémon Sun and Moon Strengthening Expansion Pack. So not the regular Sun and Moon pack, the little expansion pack. And well, it's a stadium card, as you probably can already see, and what it does is it removes your weakness from your fire and metal Pokemon. Now, first of all, what? Altar of the Sun is basically a thing for Solgaleo, who is a metal psychic Pokemon, not a metal fire Pokemon. So straight off the bat, I'm wondering what's going on here. Has someone just assumed that he's metal fire? I mean, we all thought he was going to be metal fire when we saw him, so I suppose it makes sense in that respect, except he's not metal fire. So that, it's not a big thing, doesn't really matter, but it's confusing. Now, it gets rid of weakness, which sounds like a very good thing, but let's have a look at some of the history of getting rid of weakness here. Now, currently, we've got the Pokemon Tool Weakness Policy, which doesn't see a huge amount of play. It saw a little bit of play in Primal Groudon decks, but it doesn't really see much play anymore. Maybe this is because we've got tools like Fighting Fury Bout and Floatstone that are so good we'd rather be playing them instead. Maybe in the past it was too easy to get rid of using cards like Xerosic and Tool Scrapper. And of course, maybe it's just because, you know what? It's a one-time thing you can put on one Pokemon. Now, we've also got Flash Energy, which takes away the weakness of electric-type Pokemon. It's a special energy. You attach it up, get rid of weakness. Now, it saw a little bit of play in Manectric decks for a while, but then I think the combination of Enhanced Hammer, Xerosic, ways to get rid of it, plus, of course, it can't be used with things like Max Elixir or even Mega Manectric's attack due to the fact it's a special, not a basic, saw it to not have a huge amount of play. Now, we've also seen Pokemon that get rid of weaknesses. Exploud and Levani both did basically the same thing. As of Level X, now this did see a little bit of play back, but not a huge amount, and these all got rid of weakness. Now, this is a stadium, and again, we've got some historical basis. Glacier Stadium came out back in the day, got rid of the weakness from water Pokemon. Holland Legacy got rid of weakness from any Delta Pokemon. And more recently, Shadow Circle, which came out in the X and Y base set, got rid of weakness from any Pokemon that have a dark energy attached, whether they're dark or not. And that saw a little bit of play in Darkrai and Yveltal decks, but then that went away as well because people had other stadiums they want to play. Now here, clearly getting rid of weakness is good. But your opponent can just replace the stadium. So if your opponent puts down a Skyfield, for instance, and then attacks you, well, now your weakness is gone. So that's a little bit of a problem. You're putting the game in your opponent's hand. Now, I suppose you can play Ninetales here. And Ninetales is a fire Pokemon, so he hits the theme, so to speak. But are you really going to play a Stage 1 to keep it in play? You might. But I don't know. It's an option, shall we say. Now, I suppose what we need to do here is look at decks that may wish to use this. Metal decks like Scizor, for instance. It's a very good deck, but it's struggling because of its crippling weakness to Volcanion. Now, some Scizor decks at the London International Championships played things like Silent Lab and Red Card in tandem to try and slow them down, but really here a card like Altar of the Sun maybe could work wonders. Solgaleo himself is a metal type who's weak to fire Pokemon like Volcanion, so maybe he'll want to play a bit of this in the future. And let's not forget that in Expanded we got Bronzong decks, which are still fairly good. In terms of fire decks, we've got Volcanion decks that see a lot of play, and I've made no secret of the fact that I'm a big fan of Incineroar GX, linked to a video about him in the description. Both of whom maybe could be worried about decks like Lapras GX or Greninja, so they could potentially, and again I've got a Lapras video link in the description, maybe they could make use of this. But here's the other thing we need to think about. Do we want to use other stadiums instead? Incineroar, I've already said about, but he does more damage based on the amount of benched fire Pokemon you have, so really here I'm going to want to be playing Skyfield. Maybe metal decks want to play something like Reverse Valley to reduce the amount of damage done. I mean, it's not a huge amount of play, but you never know. Maybe something like Silent Lab to turn off the ability of basic Pokemon. That sees a fair bit of play in all kinds of decks. And that's really the problem here. Getting rid of weakness is good. Having a Pokemon with no weakness is good. Sizzle decks would love to not have a fire weakness. But here's the thing. You have got to not have a stadium you want to play instead. You've got to have a weakness which is currently being exploited. And even after all of that, you've got to remember that your opponent can just play their own stadium and turn your weakness back on. It is something your opponent has control over. They ultimately get the decision as to which stadium is in play before they attack, and that is a problem. As far as I'm concerned here, there are 3 questions you need to ask in terms of whether you play Altar of the Sun. Firstly, are you playing a predominantly fire or metal deck? Secondly, are you worried about particular decks that will hit you for weakness? Thirdly, do you have a stadium you really want to play, other than Altar of the Sun? And if the answers are yes, yes, no, you might be the kind of person that wants to play Altar of the Sun. This is the kind of card that I look at and my initial reaction is, it's amazing. But then I actually think for a minute, and I look at the history of the Pokemon trading card game, and even though we all moan about weakness, it doesn't always see a huge amount of play. But let me be very clear about this. If I'm playing a Sizzle deck, I am really strongly considering this. If I'm playing a Volcanion deck, I am really strongly considering this. Maybe with Volcanion I go to Skyfield or Scorched Earth instead, but I am at least considering it. So I think this is the kind of card where we need to go dead in the middle and give it 3 wassies. Because you know what? This could be an amazing card. It could see no play whatsoever. The one thing we've got to say about this card, it has potential. Some people will play it. The question is how much potential and how many people. Now, you know the deal, ladies and gentlemen. There is a comment section. Go nuts. There is a like button. Might I suggest clicking it? There is a subscribe button. Might I suggest clicking it? You can follow me on Twitter @TheWassy. And as always, the most important thing is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.